Hi, Isabella. My name is Ellen, and I will be correcting this essay for you today. Let's see what you've done here. First, with your task one, the graph shows 10 different universities in Britain and the amount of students. Okay. From other countries, yes, that started their studies there in 2009 and in 2014. Graph shows 10 different universities in Britain and the amount of students from other countries. Okay, that's fine. I didn't love the word amount. I would have preferred here number um, because amount makes sense if it's not something necessarily countable. Um, so I didn't love that word. I think number would have been better. I did feel like you tried almost too much to rephrase. Like you could have said international students. I think that would have been fine. Let me read it one more time to see how we could possibly make this feel a little more natural. The graph shows 10 different universities in Britain, and the. Um, how about we do this? Look, the graph shows the number of students from other countries that attended 10 different universities in Britain in 2009 and 2014. For me, that would have been the best way. Okay? Because why are they showing us the universities? Because the important thing is the number of students there. Okay? So maybe that's what's missing and what makes it feel a little more natural. All right? So let's keep going. The universities with the largest amount of students enrolling in 2009 were Brighton and Birmingham. Let me see. Brighton and Birmingham. Okay. These are followed by Leeds and then Liverpool and Manchester that both had 8 people enrolling. Least amount of students, okay, the least amount of students chose to enroll at Huddersfield and Cardiff. Okay, you kept using the word amount. You've got amount here and you've got amount here. So again, I can tell you that I don't really love the use of this word. Uh, The other thing that I'm not super happy about is the fact that you decided to talk about the 8 here at Leeds and Liverpool and Manchester, but you didn't tell us what the figures were for the highest universities. And those figures are actually more important to us. So it would have made sense to do something like this. The universities with the largest number of students enrolling in 2009 were Brighton and Birmingham with, what's that figure? 12 and 8 respectively. These were followed closely by Leeds and Liverpool and Manchester with a figure of 6. Okay, or you could have said with a figure half that of Brighton. That also would have been nice. Okay, because then you kind of make a comparison. Half that of Brighton. Okay, and then the least amount of students chose to enroll at Huddersfield and Cardiff. Again, give us a figure. It's okay. You do need to give us some data here. The schools with the most international students, here you want an S, in 2014, you don't need the word year, was once again Brighton, but in a shared second place or rather were, Liverpool and Manchester with 8 individuals beginning at each school. Okay. Again, you did the same thing. So you didn't tell us what the figure was for Brighton, which is a far more interesting piece of information because it's the highest. And instead you went with the second and third highest, which was a little strange. Overall, there was a much bigger number of people. That's awkward, a much bigger number. Overall, there were more people enrolling in 2014 than there were in 2009. Okay, so um, now, the number that comes out here for this description is 117. 117 is your word count. Now, you may know that for the past few years, IELTS no longer deducts from your score if you have under 150 words, but it's going to be impossible to get a good task achievement score with only 150 words. I'm sorry, did I say 150? I meant 117. That's what you had, 117 words, and just way, way, way too short. Now, you had 20 pieces of information here, and certainly you cannot talk about all of them, but you really glossed over a lot of information that was very important. Okay, so the thing that I want to really focus on is task achievement. I think you needed to include a lot more information that you neglected. So, give me an example. Glasgow and Edinburgh had really interesting figures because their figures, especially Edinburgh, almost doubled. Okay, 5 years later. That's an interesting figure. You have to ask yourself, did any figure decline? Well, yes, Cardiff did. Cardiff is the only school whose figures declined in 2014. So there's really not just one way to do this, but you absolutely needed to include more information. So I totally agree with you. You should focus on Brighton. You should focus on Birmingham. I absolutely agree that you should focus on Huddersfield and Cardiff and give us those figures. But I also think that some of the stuff happening here is interesting. For example, Liverpool is the only one that remained the same. Okay, that's something worth mentioning. These guys here, you could have just kind of pulled them, put them together. All right. Let's see. Especially as far as 2014 is concerned. Okay. So yeah, I think you were really missing a lot of information. Um, so I would have. There are a couple of ways to do this. So let me explain to you. One of the things that we recommend is having a paragraph which does the introduction and it talks about the overview. Okay, you put those together. Then you have two detail paragraphs. Okay, two. And then the way you divide those two is really going to reflect, it's going to reflect on your coherence and cohesion score and your task achievement. So let me tell you a couple of ways you could have done it. The first way you could have done it is to have a paragraph that talks about the important things in 2009, and then a second paragraph that talks about 2014. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to have a paragraph where you kind of highlight some major things happening in both years. Okay. So, for example, let me tell you what that would look like. That would look like a paragraph about Brighton and Birmingham, maybe Leeds as well. Okay. And then Huddersfield and Cardiff on that one paragraph. And you would talk about both years. Okay. Then you could have another shorter paragraph talking about Manchester, Liverpool, and then these three here. Okay. Without including all the data, right? Because you have 20 pieces of data. We talked about that. But you could easily mention like 10 to 12 pieces of data, and then that would be like a good kind of balance of including the things that are important and then not including the things that are not super important. Okay, so that's what I want to recommend here. The other thing that I want to recommend to you is your use of tenses. You weren't really consistent. Let me show you what I mean. Started their studies, and then were Brighton, are followed, had, and then past tense, and then past tense, and then present tense. And so I felt like you kind of flip-flopped between the past and the present. You should have been consistent. It's okay to do this in the present tense. It's even though everything is in the past, it's okay to do it. But since you did use a lot of past tense, I probably would have just been consistent and stayed with the past tense. Okay. All right. So that's the last thing I want to talk about here. Now let's talk about international marketing. All right. This also feels kind of small. Let's see what you did. Yeah, it's 228. So you really need to include a little more information. I'm going to tell you where I think you could have included more. I can tell you right away that at 228, you're not going to be able to get a good task achievement score. Again, they're not going to lower your score a band for being under length, but it's going to be impossible to get a good high score with such a low word count. Okay. The other thing that I want to point out to you is your paragraphing. We typically recommend a 4-paragraph structure. You see, this as a paragraph on its own is really kind of tiny. And so it's a matter of coherence and cohesion here. And paragraphing is a part of that, okay? Because under the coherence and cohesion criterion, they mention paragraphing, okay? And that you have to have logical paragraphing. To have a little itty bitty paragraph of only 2 sentences is not considered logical paragraphing, okay? So I can tell you those things just looking at this. Now let's actually read it and see what you wrote. Today, advertisements from other countries are becoming more and more common. Some see this as unnecessary and invasive, while others view it as a way to become a more multicultural society. Okay, that's nice. But the essay actually asks you something very specific. It tells you it wants you to discuss both views and then give your opinion. Now, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the band descriptors. I know I keep referring to them. But in the band descriptors under task achievement, for band 7, it says, presents a clear position throughout the response. So let's kind of decodify some of those words. Your position is your answer to whatever this is. Every essay has something like this. It either has a question, it says to what extent do you agree or disagree, it says discuss both views and give your opinion, it says discuss the advantages and disadvantages. Whatever that command is, you need to respond to it very directly. And the smartest thing to do is to respond to it in your introduction. Because what does the word throughout mean? Throughout means from the beginning to the end. So how are you going to make your position, your answer to this clear from the beginning? By saying what your position is in your introduction. So you started off nicely, but you really needed to tell us what your opinion is. Okay? So absolutely a must. I want to see you including that in your introduction. Again, whatever this command or this question asks you, you have to answer it in your introduction. Are there other ways to do it? Yes. Is this the easiest, cleanest, most basic way to do it? Yes. Okay. All right, so firstly, the notion that companies use marketing to enhance their sales could be seen as an intrusion because this is usually done by larger corporations. Considering that, the companies doing this are therefore able to pay their way into marketing in different countries, even if the locals might not have any interest in the products. Hence, it can give the feeling that the product placement is being forced onto a community that does not really have a connection to the concept in question. Oh, what nice language. The grammar here is really, really lovely. It's nice. I like it. I do think you could have given us an example. Okay, so all of this is really very theoretical, and so I think you could have given us an example, like even a made up example. Like for example, geez, I don't know, maybe maybe customers in gosh, I really have no idea. I'm just going to make up a dumb example, okay? Maybe customers in, okay, I got it. Maybe customers in Greece do not care to have rice cookers advertised to them because rice is not a main staple of their cuisine. And so it feels just rather invasive and unnecessary. Okay, so that's kind of example I mean. All right, and that kind of goes along with what you're saying. But you do have to support your ideas. Okay. All right. Secondly, being exposed to international culture by marketing is a way of enriching and broadening the view of a country. Doing this through commercial advertising is a way to create economical benefits as well. All right, let's talk about what some of the issues here are. Here you talked about how it's an intrusion, right? So the negatives. Here, this is actually a positive. So what you've done is you've switched sides, okay? So it's like the opposing argument. When you do that, you don't want to use firstly and secondly. You want to say something like on the one hand and on the other hand. Okay, something like that to show contrast, to show, again, this is an issue of coherence and cohesion, using the right linking devices to signpost your ideas and your arguments. Okay. All right. Um, and again, you needed some sort of example. Okay. You're extending it, but you need to provide some sort of support for it. All right. Lastly, I feel like international marketing is a mutually beneficial way to create both economical and cultural gains. However, I do not agree that it is necessary to achieve this through advertising. There are many different ways of sharing, different ways to do something. There are many different ways to share ideas and cultural differences, and this does not have to be done by benefiting large companies. Okay, this is a complex issue with widely different narratives to take into consideration. It could be difficult to find a solution that satisfies everyone. All right. Um, so this, all right, let's talk about this. So essentially, it's not necessarily that you think it's an invasion and an intrusion, but you just don't want to benefit large corporations. That's my understanding. It's not like you think it's in, yeah, but you think it's a little invasive by the way you say that. Like you say yes to the idea of sharing information, but no to the idea of promoting international products. That's kind of what I understood. Um, okay. So let's talk about this. First of all, this absolutely needed more development. Okay. Um, let's see. It is usually done by larger corporations, considering that the companies hence can be a force on the community does not really have a connection to the concept in question. Okay. Here, maybe you could have thrown in some of this, right, about this like benefiting large companies. Um, you could have said something like, this benefits large companies at the expense of smaller local companies, which is why many people find it invasive and intrusive. Okay? You could have done that. So I would have taken this idea and I would have put it up here. Then here, you should have talked about what those economical benefits are, even though honestly, you probably don't want to, because when it says economical form of education, a lot of people misunderstand this word. And it's interesting. It's how IELTS is kind of testing your vocabulary. By economical, they mean inexpensive. So you didn't mean economical benefits, you meant economic benefits. But if you're talking about economic benefits, it's not what the topic is asking you. Okay? I don't know if that makes sense. Because what you're saying here, you're saying it creates inexpensive benefits, but that doesn't make sense, which leads me to believe that you meant economic benefits. But that's not what the essay asked. I hope that made sense. I tried to say it in two different ways to make it clear. I hope I did. So basically what I'm seeing here, Isabella, is that you've got some nice writing, but it definitely needs some work. It definitely needs some polishing. It's definitely too short. You need to support your ideas. You need to structure your essays more appropriately. Okay. And so, what I want to suggest to you at this point is to take a look at the online course. There's lots of information on how to structure your essays correctly and how to write really strong paragraphs that are cohesive. So, take a look at it. I'd love to see you on that. I think it's just going to make a huge difference in your writing. Okay. Um, I saw lots of good language skills, but it needs to come together with the writing skills as well. Okay, so hopefully we'll see you on the course. I really look forward to it. It'll give us an opportunity to continue working together. So good luck to you. Okay, and I hope to see you on the course soon.